Acolyte Season 2 is possible, but there's a lot of uncertainty with it, and I don't think it's looking too good right now. So, the final episode of The Acolyte was, to some, very good, to other people, not so good, and for a different type of groups of people, there's kind of like good and bad. I'm a little bit in that position. I'm kind of in the middle about this episode, because some things were cool, and other things were weird. I don't think it was concluded that well. But firstly, to lay on the table some positives of what I think was cool, I would say Qimir's fighting was pretty awesome, and just the lighting that they used for some of Qimir's entrances in the little cave that he was in was generally really cool, just from a film perspective. Thank you very much for that. It was awesome. Keep doing more of this in Star Wars. Please, no matter what you're making, just keep doing whatever this was. Just keep doing that. The other thing was the death of Soul, which was very brutal. The acting that went through, you could see his eyes, the way he was choked to death slowly and then suddenly just all the way through. That was a very intense moment, and kind of reflecting a little bit upon that after watching the episode, I realized, wow, okay, that was pretty damn dark, and that's basically what I wanted from Acolyte, to have very dark moments. We saw some of that in episode 5 with the death of the 2 other main Jedi, and now we saw it again with Soul, with his basically windpipe being crushed by Osha, which was an interesting decision, but nevertheless the actual death itself was really cool. Then the third and last thing, which I thought was pretty neat, and I know this is a little bit controversial, but I will go back to it later in this video, was Darth Plagueis. The introduction of Darth Plagueis in live-action Star Wars. Honestly, I think that was pretty cool. Yeah, sure, there are some confusions out there, some doubts, and people a little bit unhappy about Darth Plagueis returning during this time period, but we are right now in canon timeline, and canon timeline is already a little bit different than what we saw in Legends. So in terms of where exactly the placement of the characters are compared to Legends in canon, I think it's not as important as it might look like. I think what's more important is that the actual character themselves, the lore around the character, is similar to what we see in Legends, especially for a character like Darth Plagueis, who's an incredibly important character. But as I said, I will go back to that a little bit later in the video with some more thoughts and how Darth Plagueis could be now included in Acolyte Season 2. Overall though, if I'm gonna wrap my opinion on this series in a quick way, I would say the series is not exactly my favorite piece of Star Wars media, that's for sure. I think the writing was off in many ways. I think the editing was really weird in some places of the series. It pulled me out of the immersion, the experience, and I really think the characters like Osha and May were really, really weak. In no way or form do I care about Osha or May. I really don't care about them as characters in Star Wars. They are just, for me, they added really nothing to the timeline of this period that felt important. They could just as easily remove them and the whole witches concept of this time period and still continue on with the story with Qimir and Darth Plagueis and some of the other Jedis from the Republic. But yeah, Osha and May, just not really my type of characters. They didn't really do anything for me, but if they did something for you, if you felt some form of connection with the characters, then good stuff, but not for me. So, a Season 2 of The Acolyte, what will that look like? That's an interesting question. I think, as of right now, with the conclusion that we got from this season of The Acolyte, they're basically setting it up so that Qimir and Osha will go against Vernestra and May, and then we will have Plagueis, most likely, interfering with Qimir. That's kind of how I think Season 2 will end up being. That said, I'm not entirely sure if I like this, and that's mainly because they are adding a lot of weight on the Jedi, as in they're adding a lot of importance on the Jedi side of things. This is supposed to be a dark side-led story. Make it a dark side-led story. Don't make it about Vernestra and May focusing on trying to find Qimir and make that the whole point of the series, because that will make Season 2 a Jedi point of view and not a dark side Sith point of view. And don't get me wrong, the Sith and the Jedi are very important, and the dynamics between these two characters are incredibly important to the overall arc of Star Wars, or the Star Wars universe, should I say. But I do think that within that, there is a place in these stories, no matter where you are in the timeline, where the dark side is the one who's winning or the most prominent element in the story. And Acolyte should be that. I think for Season 2 to be successful, they need to turn things around for the series. Change things up a little bit. Ditch the Jedi. They don't have to be a main or primary source. We should focus on Qimir, Osha, and Darth Plagueis. Make them the primary main characters of Season 2, and by doing that, they have the possibility to make something that's quite memorable and quite unique, in a good way for the Star Wars canon timeline. In terms of Darth Plagueis, I just want to say that, again, I think seeing him in live action was really great. I think his design was phenomenal. The way they made him look was this old, beaten down, kind of, as far as we saw at least, was really fitting for the character based on some artwork that I've seen him of. He doesn't look that elegant though, which is a little bit questionable, because we know that he goes by the name 𝐒𝐓𝐀𝐑, and he is infiltrating the Republic by being an upstanding political figure, at least in the beginning, before he introduces Palpatine to be the face of his narrative. But overall, I'm really happy with the design choice that they went with for Darth Plagueis, or 𝐒𝐓𝐀𝐑. Where my criticism comes in though, is when we start to look at the inclusion of Darth Plagueis on a kind of, let's just call it, the loss of storytelling and film. I'm using that term very vaguely, I don't really mean it literally, but basically, right now, Darth Plagueis being included in Acolyte doesn't make much sense for the story. If something doesn't add any value to a story in whatever movie or show you're making, it shouldn't be in there. If the inclusion doesn't support the conclusion of the story, it shouldn't be in it. And Season 1 of The Acolyte was meant to be a very conclusive story, which was told to us by the producers. So, in my opinion, it doesn't really make much sense including him. They could just as easily included him in Season 2 of The Acolyte and make it even more impactful than kind of just sneaking Darth Plagueis in the shadows and not doing anything about it. When I was watching the episode, I actually sat on my couch and just thinking, okay, let this be just a little bit of a teaser, and then at the end of the episode, he will finally reveal himself, and then he will destroy Osha or destroy Qimir, or whatever decision they want to go with. He will actually have a more meaningful impact, and then we can actually see what he's doing on that island, and or otherwise where he really is in terms of his political standing within the Republic in this time period of Star Wars. And then we can lean that into Season 2 with Darth Plagueis being expanded upon even more. Plagueis is such an important character with so much weight behind him, and he's not someone that should be just thrown into whatever just to create some hype for the next potential season. This was the first time we saw him in live action, and the first time a big character like that is being revealed in live action Star Wars, it better mean something. And it doesn't really mean anything in Season 1. So that's kind of just, well, it's just weird. It's a weird decision. It doesn't make much sense. So really the only reason it's added in right now is to cater to fans who recognize Darth Plagueis, and they can do like, oh, and then be like, well, that's Darth Plagueis. So yeah. I'm uncertain of the quality of Season 2 if they continue the path of adding a lot of Jedi and light side elements to this story when they really shouldn't be there. Only a little bit of hinting to Jedis once in a while, give them some fighting maybe, sure, that's cool. Some light side contrast to the very strong dark side focus is fine, but keep it focused on the dark side and really show us what the Sith are all about during this time period of Star Wars. Take a lot of notes from the Darth Plagueis novel and ensure that you make a story that's not just all over the place, but that it's actually focused on the dark side of the Force and the surrounding characters that supports it during this time. But with that said, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget, the Force is always with you.